Hi, my name is Mary Stokes. I'm a singer and I've written songs, and music has changed my life. My earliest musical memory, in fact, I've a couple of significant ones, and because I was born the last of a large family, all of whom were involved in music, I don't ever remember not having music around me, but I remember distinctly sitting on a nun's knee when I was very small singing "These Boots Are Made for Walking." That actually is probably the earliest memory. Then subsequent to that, I very definitely remember a couple of things. John Lee Hooker is one of my favourite blues artists, and one of the things that I remember very well was that at a certain point in my life there was a record, there was John Lee Hooker album, and John Lee Hooker is kind of challenging because he is a blues artist, but he doesn't stick with a blues pattern. So when I was, I guess, around 6 or something like that, I remember realising that I found his music very annoying because there was no pattern and it was kind of rambling. So I remember having that experience and thinking, I don't get this. I don't hear where it's going, because it took me a while to get used to it. So when I did, it was some considerable time later, and I learned that I really, really liked that music. Well, actually, I think, yeah, and I mean, again, oddly enough, it's connected to John Lee and the history that I had there, because I suppose in much of my music, I expected to understand it kind of quickly, because again, when you're a singer, you don't have to go through the formal things, let's say, of learning an instrument. And being a singer, music kind of comes quite quickly to you. If you have a voice, you have that in your head all the time. So the fact that I found John Lee kind of difficult when I was younger meant that was a kind of fascination for me. I was kind of determined to get somewhere with it, I suppose. Blues always struck me. It always captured my energy and my heart, I suppose. And there was one period of time where we played a lot of support gigs, and we worked with a lot of blues artists. At that time, myself and the band and Brian, we had the opportunity of opening up for John Lee in what was then the Stadium. And so we did that gig, and that was very exciting. I have to confess that I was very disappointed at the time because I didn't get to meet him. So what happened was we went out on the town with his band, and then subsequent to that, about 3 months later, I was in the States. We saw that John Lee was playing and decided to go along to that gig just because we had made that connection. So we went to the gig, and who appeared from the dressing room? Well, only the bass player. Now, the bass player was interesting because we'd gone out on the town, we'd had a few pints and we'd had a good time with him. And I remember calling his attention, "Hey Jim, how's it going? Mary from Dublin, yaggedy ya." So he said, "Hey, great, yeah, we had a great time in Dublin, and would you like to come down and meet Mr. Hooker?" So we did. And we had, myself and Brian went down. He was extremely affable, really good guy, really nice to meet and talk with. And because we had so many other blues players that we had played with over the period of time, we had a lot in common. We knew people that he knew. And there were two things that struck me, I suppose. One was that all things come to you if you're lucky, in other words, that there was in my estimation, one of the greatest blues men of a particular generation, and probably the last generation of that kind of blues artist, that you get a chance to meet with someone. And I suppose the irony or the interesting thing, that in fact we're all part of this kind of family of musicians, and we had at that stage so much in common that we actually were talking really easily. So that was really proud. I was very pleased. I remember actually thinking to myself, if I had known I was going to do this 20 years later, I wouldn't have believed it, So that was one of those moments. I think that, again, the most important thing for me with the feeling, because emotion is a really strong part of my connection with music. And again, over my years of singing in different situations, for example, I would have done a lot of choral music at a particular time. So I sang in choirs, and one of the remarkable things that I felt at that time, I remember noticing and thinking about the power that simply was part of 150 voices. So that set that set me on a road of understanding. Part of what I enjoyed about music was the empowerment. So feeling strong, I think, is one of the most important elements. And also, I suppose I would feel that there is the significance of the communication that music brings to you. So the fact that you can stand in front of people who are complete strangers, and that with no particular introduction or conversation, that you can connect and be part of a community with them. So that's very important. Yes, I'm not sure that I can separate music being my life and music changing my life. I suppose what I mean is that I can't really imagine being without music. So, yes.